bringing you today's top headlines from on campus and around the world. But before we begin, I encourage you as always to subscribe to the Franciscan Beat YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest and greatest news from our campus. A human rights activist is sounding the alarm over pending International World Health Organization or WHO treaties that would sign away U.S. sovereignty and human rights protections, consigning its citizens to a freedom-crushing global health surveillance state. WHO agreements can be voted upon as early as May, would render U.S. citizens subject to the health policy decisions of WHO, which could potentially force quote-unquote vaccinations, quarantine detentions, and the censorship of dissenting health information, warned Reggie Littlejohn, founder and president of Women's Rights Without Frontiers, during a Stop Vax Passports Task Force webinar. "We're in the battle of our lives and we don't know it," said Littlejohn, advising that the digital gulag enabled by a combination of surveillance, a central digital bank currency, and social control to basically trap us is around the corner. She pointed to a disturbing proposed amendment to the IHR that deleted an Article 3 clause designed to protect human rights and freedoms. The clause required that the implementation of these regulations shall be with the full respect for the dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms of persons. And a proposal replaced it with the implementations of these regulations shall be based on the principles of equity and inclusivity. Littlejohn also pointed out that, importantly, other amendments struck the word non-binding with the obvious intent to thereby make them binding. Similar provisions in a WHO convention, agreement, or other international instrument on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response, which Littlejohn simply described as a treaty, likewise compromise national sovereignty and basic human freedoms, she warned. "The thing is that this trap is coming down on us imminently, not in a matter of years, but in a matter of months, unless we do something about it," she said. An empty coal train hit a rock slide along the tracks in West Virginia on Wednesday morning, causing a fiery derailment that injured 3 crew members, CSX Transportation said in a statement. 4 locomotives and 22 empty rail cars derailed in the Summers County near the New River, CSX said. The lead locomotive, which carried a conductor, an engineer, and an engineer trainee, caught fire, and the crew members were being evaluated and treated for non-life-threatening injuries, the company said. CSX said an unoccupied locomotive was partially in the waterway where an unknown amount of diesel fuel and oil spilled, officials said. Environmental teams were deploying containment measures. The derailment occurred in a remote area just south of Sandstone, inside the New River National Park and Preserve, according to a statement from the West Virginia Emergency Management Division. Several state agencies are monitoring the situation and said public water systems downstream have been notified and are monitoring for any potential public health impacts. No hazardous materials were being transported and there was no danger to the public, CSX said. The company said employee and community safety was a top priority as it sends teams to assess the situation and develop a recovery plan. On to campus news. Bishop Jeffrey Monforton of the Diocese of Steubenville, Ohio, has officially banned the traditional Latin Mass from being offered on Franciscan University's campus, despite efforts of the school's president to keep the Old Mass available for students and faculty. The mandate came down last week and was effective immediately. The diocese said the move was intended to implement the norms, including the most recent rescript issued by the Holy See regarding the celebration of the traditional liturgy. The bishop has allowed the nearby parish of St. Peter's to continue offering the Latin Mass and is seeking a dispensation from Rome to maintain the Old Mass there. The Mass at Franciscan has been canceled, a spokesperson for the diocese said. The bishop is seeking a dispensation for the Mass at St. Peter's, where the weekly Latin Mass has been held for years. St. Peter's Church in Steubenville is about a mile from the university campus. The traditional Latin Mass at St. Peter's is celebrated weekly, with a high Mass about once a month on the first Sunday. Father Dave Pavanka, the president of Franciscan University, told students in an email that he had tried to convince the bishop to allow the Latin Mass to continue on campus, but to no avail. I spoke with Bishop Montforton multiple times, hoping we could work out a way to continue offering the traditional Latin Mass at Franciscan University for the many students, faculty, and staff with a special love for this ancient form of the sacred liturgy, Pavanka wrote. Bishop Montforton remains convinced, however, that this decision is best for our diocese in light of Pope Francis's 2021 Motu Proprio Traditionis Custodes. According to attendees of the university's Latin Mass, it has become very popular, with easily 250 at each of them this semester. Thomas Crow, who trained the servers for the Old Mass, said that the chapel's been packed and it's mostly students. He affirmed that the university, known for its more charismatic style of the liturgy, was always supportive and would make sure we had what we needed. The opportunity for students, especially students who had never attended the traditional Latin Mass previously, the opportunity was tremendous, Crow said. He thought it was unfortunate that the bishop was in the situation he was in, and that the idea in the Vatican that it needs to restrict the Old Mass is tragic. If the bishop felt he could only allow either the university or the parish to maintain the Latin Mass, choosing St. Peter's made more sense. However, since neither Traditionis Custodes nor the most recent rescript forbid the celebration of the Latin Mass in a church other than a parish, it's not clear what stipulation the bishop considered required the immediate banning of the Old Mass from the university. In fact, it's because of the rescript, specifically about parish churches, that Montforton is seeking dispensation from St. Peter's Church. The Vatican's recent restrictions on the traditional Latin Mass and its clear posturing for further crackdowns have increasingly drawn criticism from the ranks of the episcopacy. Pope Francis himself has emphasized that those who are attached to the TLM should be accompanied, listened to, and given time. In an effort to preserve and restore the celebration of the Tridentine Mass, an initiative called Missae Pro Missa, Latin for Masses for the Mass, was launched on Ash Wednesday of this year by a group of American lay Catholics who love the traditional Latin Mass and wish to see it remain a flourishing and normal part of the Church. The project seeks to secure at least 1 million Masses offered for the preservation of the TLM by Pentecost Sunday on May 28th. As for today's weather, today was a high of 52 degrees. Tomorrow is going to be rainy with a high of 45. Next few days are going to be a mix of rain and clouds with temps in the mid-40s. Well, let's just hope and pray that that summer weather comes our way very, very soon. Well, that about wraps it up for today. Thank you for tuning in to the Franciscan Beat News Show. My name is Sean Kenny. I'll see you all tomorrow. Good night, Steubenville!